So let's continue with the Course in Miracles, text chapter 26, the transition. And 26.2, many forms, one correction. So the mistake, the error, comes in billions of forms, but there's really only one correction to all of them because it's really only one mistake. It is not difficult to understand the reasons why you do not ask the Holy Spirit to solve all your problems. Anytime you really ask and pray is when the aeroplane goes shudder. Oh, God. Okay. And so why not wake up every morning and just choose this for yourself and go and write it on your wall and go and write it with a permanent marker so that it never gets off your wall, no matter how anyone or what anyone thinks of it. Just, if you're going to put a tattoo in your hand. It says, ask Holy Spirit. So before you make any decision, if you're stuck with anything, if you're trapped with anything, ask Holy Spirit. And how do you ask Holy Spirit? Be still and know I am. And it's an invitation. It's an invocation to your spirit to make itself known to you. The fallen mind is actually looking for happiness. So it's now asking that which destroys it to remember what it is. It's quite funny because the ego doesn't really know. It's asking the fire that will destroy it and burn out its memory to save it. But ask anyway. So Holy Spirit has not greater difficulty in resolving some other than others. All problems to him are the same. Every problem is the same to him because each one is solved in just the same respect and thought, the same approach, and through the same approach. Say thought instead of through. Okay. The aspect that needs solving do not change, whatever form the problem seems to take. A problem can appear in many forms, well, in billions of them. And it will do so while the problem lasts. And what's the real problem? The fact that you're unaware that you're dreaming. The fact that you're unaware that this localized activity you call you is but one localized activity of a mind asleep. And it's fractured itself into billions of beings, 8 billion on this planet to be exact. And that all 8 billions contain inside each one of them the essence of itself. I say inside, but it's neither in or out. It's the very essence of it. And what is the essence of itself? Spirit. And what does that spirit contain? It contains the memory of God, the holy memory of God, Holy Spirit. It is made from the very essence of God who is holy. Therefore, the essence of you is Holy Spirit and contains the memory of God. What's asking for solutions? That which doesn't exist. So what's the solution to that which doesn't exist? To remember that which does as itself. That's the only purpose you have in this world. Okay. So while you think you have problems, you don't realize that that self, that the truth of what you are, is shared equally with everyone, because there's only one of us that dreamt up everyone. So realize you, the dreamer, take that responsibility. I dreamt this up. And I, the dreamer, who is now localized, realize that everything I see are fractures of my dreaming self. And I now choose to remember. And since I can't figure it out way to wake up, I can only ask the memory in me of what I am to remind me, God's Holy Spirit, remind me of what I am. It serves no purpose to attempt to solve it in a special form. No technique, no meditation, no breathing, no prana, no chakras, no Reiki, no hope, nothing. Nothing but the memory of God. And it will direct you, maybe a technique in order to remember yourself, but certainly not by getting out of your mind and getting drugged or whatever the case may be. Certainly that's just escapism. It's going to come to you knowingly, and it's going to come to you knowingly when you're being in tune with yourself. And what is in tune with yourself? What is itself? Meditation. So what is meditation? It's the nature of self. What is to meditate? To be still and know I am. So return to that silence as often as you can. When any problem comes up, go be silent. You'll see many geniuses in this world, great inventors and great entrepreneurs. They have this technique where they go be silent and they invite themselves into it. Now, of course, they're doing it from a body-mind perspective. But when they go be silent, the inspiration comes, and then they act. Now, can you imagine that you go be silent and ask the inspiration to remind you of what you are, not only so that you can act and go and create, but that you can act and remember, act upon that essence, and then share it, which means extend true creation. It will recur and then recur again and yet again until that has been answered for all time. And there's only one answer that concludes it for all time. And once it's been answered, it will not rise again in any form. When you are yourself knowingly, there is no more thought of what you're not, and therefore no more thought of what to do. And only then are you released from that thought of separation, from the idea of sin, fear, guilt. The Holy Spirit offers you, the memory of God offers you release from every problem that you think you have. So if the memory of God is silent stillness, return to silent stillness. They are the same to Him, because each fracture, regardless of its form it seems to take, is a demand that another fracture suffers loss and make a sacrifice that you, a fracture, might gain. So it's one fracture trying to gain control of all other fractures in order to be happy, in order to be in power, in order to be peaceful, not realizing that you're taking away from fractures. It's like one hand nailing another hand because the one hand is afraid of the other hand, and yet they both belong to the same body, which is crazy. And when the situation is worked out, so no one loses, is the problem gone, because it was an error in perception that now has been corrected. One mistake is not more difficult for Him to bring to truth than is another, because it's all the same mistake. You fell asleep and dreamt up an illusion that doesn't exist. You've never left God, Holy Son of God, you which is the Christ, you which is Christ awake. The part of you that's dreaming is not real. The part of you that's awake, that Jesus came to demonstrate, that's the real. Jesus woke up and demonstrated through His awakening, resurrection, ascension, what we all are. What do? We turned Him into a deity, and the minute we turned Him into subject-object, we forgot what He was trying to teach. Yet return to His teachings, whether it's in the Bible or the Course of Miracles. It's the same. It's non-dualistic. I and my Father are one. What I can do, you can do, and greater things than I shall do, you shall do. I seek mercy, not sacrifice. He taught us these beautiful things, not just in the Course, even in the Bible. For there is but one mistake. The whole idea that loss is possible, that you could forget who you are, that you could forget God, that God could forget you, that not only could you forget God and God forget you, but that you could be punished for forgetting. Okay? And so the whole idea that loss is possible and could result in gain for anyone. Because if one loses, we all lose. And if one gains, we all gain. If this was true, which it is not, thank goodness, then God would be unfair. Sin would be possible, which it's not. No matter what you do in a dream, it's not true. Attack would be justified, which is not possible because you're only attacking yourself. And vengeance would be fair. How could vengeance be fair if it's vengeance on yourself for having dreamt up something that isn't true? Not possible. Just in dreams, just in the dual world, just in the world of religion. This one mistake in any form is one correction. There is no loss. To think there is simply a mistake. You have no problems. Though you think, that's why you think you do, you have. And yet you could not think so if you saw them vanish one by one, which is what the Holy Spirit does, the memory of God does, without regard to size, complexity, and all complexity is of ego, or place and time, because that's an illusion, or any attribute which you perceive that makes each one seem different from the rest. So the minute you see differences, people, places, things, and events, not true. The minute you think one place is more holy than the next, not true. The minute you try and mystify something, not true. It's all the same. No specialness in anything. Don't make any place on this world. Don't make any place in yourself, any idea, any identity, any body special. It's all the same. Dreaming fractures, shadows upon shadows, and yet the light contained in each one is the only truth. Think not the limits you impose on what you can see can limit God in any way. You may not see God, and he cannot see your fractured body mind, but he knows the essence of you asleep, and he calls that to return to him and awaken in him, awaken in heaven, awaken as Christ, the Son of God, the extension of God's eternal energy, forever in the eternal now, here now, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, omnificent, always, never changing. An immutable law of one cannot be changed. The miracle of justice. And what is justice in God's eyes? What is justice for God? His son is free. His son but dreams a dream that wasn't real. His son has never left the kingdom. God's justice is every fracture is a part of the son. And therefore, every fracture needs no forgiveness, even though it's asleep. Just return to awakening and be the son that you are. The miracle of justice can correct all errors. Every problem is an error, not a sin. It does injustice to the Son of God because it keeps him in his dream and therefore is not true. The Holy Spirit, the memory of God, does not evaluate injustices as great or small, more or less. They have no properties to him. They are mistakes, illusions, in other words, projections of illusions. They're not even real, from which the Son of God is suffering, but needlessly suffering. He does need to suffer because he's dreaming it all up. It's not true. And so he takes the thorns and nails away. He does not pause to judge whether the hurt be large or little. He doesn't listen to your nagging and your suffering stories and how the world hurt you. He doesn't listen. He's not aware of it. When you're going blah, 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 and suffering and crying, he's just unaware that you're doing it. He just knows a fractured identity is doing it, but the real you is just dreaming. He makes but one judgment, that to hurt God's Son must be unfair, and therefore is not so, and therefore to hurt God's Son is not possible, only in his own dream. You who believe it is safe to give, but some mistakes to be corrected, while you keep others for yourself. Remember this. So don't do that. Don't say, okay, I'll ask for forgiveness on this, but to that I don't deserve forgiveness because I'm so evil. Don't ever do that to yourself. Remember this. Justice, God's justice is total. And justice isn't vengeance. And all vengeance is mine, said the Lord, is just some Anunnaki, ancient god of old that lived on this planet 350,000 years ago. Enki or Enlil or one of them. Okay? Nothing to do with the truth. There is no such thing as partial justice. If God's Son is guilty, then he is condemned, and he deserves no mercy from the God of justice. And that is just fantasy, because that which is made from love can only be love and nothing else. The idea that even the devil sinned against God in heaven, or the devil, just ridiculous. If Lucifer was made from love like all the other angels, where would it now become evil? It only became evil as it fell. Lucifer fell asleep, fell from heaven, fell asleep and dreamt he was somewhere else. What are we? We, the Son of God, are that. Lucifer fell asleep. We're Lucy in the sky with diamonds, fell asleep. But ask not God to punish him, because you find him guilty, not you nor your brother, and would have him die. Just realize he made a mistake, he made an error, he forgot what he was, he let darkness overcome him, and he acted in a vengeful way, and he murdered, or he raped, or he destroyed, or he maimed, or he went to war, and lots of people died, or he hurt this animal, or he hurt. But he didn't sin, he just hurt characters in his own dreaming mind, of which you're one and he's one of yours. So forgive that you may be free. Forgive that you don't carry this burden with you. Okay, to forgive is to release yourself. God offers you the means to see his innocence, see the truth of him, see his Holy Spirit, not his ego, body, mind that acted out the evil deeds. Would it be fair to punish him because you will not look on what is there to see? And what is really there to see? His Holy Spirit, the Christ within him, as the Christ is within you. Each time you keep a problem for yourself to solve, or judge that it is one that has no resolution, like when you're complaining about the world, when you're complaining about the economy, the vaccines, the viruses, the petrol price, the president, the economics, the this, the that. When you're complaining, you're judging. And the minute you judge, you're in the dream state. You're in separation. When you judge, you're keeping a problem. So you ask Holy Spirit to help you forgive your partner, your boss, and then you complain about the world. That's what this line is saying. Every time you keep a problem for yourself to solve, don't know how to overcome this, I'm attacking this and that, and the petrol price, and the economy, and the cell phone signals, and the weather, and the Germans, and the English, and the soccer, and the cricket, and so we go. It's always a problem. Everything is a problem. Okay. So the Russians, the Bulgarians, the Romanians, the whatever, you always got some nation that you have a problem with. You're straight back into it. But don't try and fix that. So every time you do, there's no resolution, and you have made it great and past hope of healing. No, it's not past the hope of healing, but it's past the hope of healing in you, because you choose to be in resistance. And while you stay in resistance, while you drag up the past, attack your brother, attack the world, you keep yourself in the dream. And therefore you deny the miracle of justice. You deny that the miracle of justice can be fair. Because what's the miracle of justice? The remembrance of yourself as that which is the shared being with God. If God is just, and he is, then there can be no problems that justice cannot solve. But if you believe that some injustices are fair and good, in other words, punish the bastard, keep him in jail, okay, and necessary to preserve yourself, then guess what happens if you believe that's true? It is these problems that you think are great and cannot be resolved. You know? So, I mean, like I keep saying, how do we end racism? We've forgiven it, we've forgotten the past, we let go, and we treat everyone equally going forward. But if you choose to bring up the past, and I know the atrocities with that, but if you keep bringing it up and hoping that you won't recreate it, by bringing it up, you're recreating it. So how do you let it go? And I come from a country, I live in a country which 26 years ago was terrible. And, I was a young student and fighting the oppression and, free Nelson Mandela and bring equal rights. What has happened to the new government? It's no different, no less racist than the previous one. Why? Because they keep bringing up the past. It won't let it go. And the corrupt crooks that act as politicians that are in the government, what do? They just steal. They just steal and use the past to say, well, I deserve this now. I suffered under the apartheid regime, and so now I'm going to steal from my people. You're stealing from the very people that voted you in. So the poverty is just worse. The crime just keeps worsening. Why? Because the mind, asleep in this country, keeps regurgitating the past, won't let the past go, uses the past to justify its cruel deeds today, and so we stay trapped in delusion. And yet if we were to practice forgiveness, and would truly practice forgiveness, just like Nelson Mandela did, can you imagine we all just forgave and forgot, and they'd see no more color, see no more race, you'd see no more past, you'd only work together for the common goal of creating a joyous experience and livelihood for all. We would eradicate poverty, we would eradicate suffering, and this would be an example to the world. But egos love to dredge at the past, to make themselves feel like victims, and to blame everybody else, and just keep the whole ball rolling. One's never denouncing or denying those experiences existed in the illusion. Of course they did. They were atrocities to ourselves. Okay. But the only way to overcome is forgive, forget, move on with a clear slate, move on in oneness, move on in the appreciation that what appears to be different is illusion. And inside all of us is the very truth, that which is shared with God. For there are those who want to suffer loss. They bring it up over and over again. And no one whom you wish to be preserved from sacrifice entirely. So they want to suffer, they want to talk about the past, and they want others to suffer for it. And therefore, keeping ourselves, because if one suffers, we all do, since we're one dreamer, fractured in billions of beings. Consider once again your special function, forgiveness. One has given you to see him in perfect sinlessness, self and others. So if you practice forgiveness, you see perfect sinlessness. And what happens when you forgive? You forget. It literally doesn't come up. It's not, I've forgiven him, but I won't forget him. I'll forgive him what he did. I'll never forget what he did. Well, that's not forgiveness. That's posing as someone better that's forgiving someone less. That is just as much asleep as anything else. And you will ask no sacrifice of him, because you could not will he suffer loss. Because if he suffers, you suffer, since you're a shared being. The miracle of justice you call forth will rest on you as surely as him. You are a shared being. Nor will the Holy Spirit be content until it is received by everyone. Why? The Holy Spirit is the memory of God in everyone. For what you give him is everyone's. And by you giving it, can he ensure that everyone receives the memory of himself equally? You are equally one holy Son of God. Think then how great your own release will be when you are willing to receive correction for all your problems. Wouldn't you rather give up this world to be free, to truly be there as you are, the extension of the love and joy of God? What can be greater than being knowingly the love and joy of God? You will not keep one more illusion, for pain in any form you will not want. And you will see each little hurt resolved before the Holy Spirit's gentle sight. Why? Because the memory of God makes you realize that you are the eternal, sinless, innocent, holy Son of God. For all of them are little in his sight and worth no more than just a tiny sigh before they disappear, to be forever undone and forever unremembered. Forgive and forget. What seemed once to be a special problem, a mistake without remedy, or an affliction without a cure, has been transformed into a universal blessing. Universe, one collapses, becomes one. Sacrifice is gone. And in its place, the love of God can be remembered by the self, which is the love of God, and will shine away all memory of sacrifice and loss. And what is sacrifice and loss? Separation. What is sacrifice and loss? The illusion of the universe, the illusion of mind bodies. And in its place, the love of God is remembered as the self. And the dream of the universe and of you as a localization and all other localizations dissolve, and just the light extends, light being love, being joy, being peace, and extends, and you are part of that. You are one with that light which is God, that love which is God, and you extend yourself lovingly, and you do it while you embody mind, and you do it knowingly, because until you completely are under the control of that which is your Holy Spirit, if you're not completely under control of your Holy Spirit, you're partially controlled or totally controlled by the wrong ego mind. And if you're controlled by the wrong ego mind, the world's evil, because that's all it wants to show you. When you're controlled by the right mind, the Christ mind, the self, the shared being with God, everything's at peace, and the new world presents itself to you. What do you see? You see Christ. You see love in everyone, and love is the absence of body. So you recognize yourself as love, and everything is an echo for the love of God, for the voice of God. God cannot be remembered until justice is loved instead of fear. What is justice? The equality, the non-judgment, the equality of all of it. He cannot be unjust to anyone or anything, because he knows that everything that is belongs to him. He knows that everything that is in him and will forever be, as he created, extensions of his loving self. Nothing he loves but must be sinless and beyond attack, because it's perfect. Your special function, forgiveness, opens wide the door, which is the memory of his love kept perfectly intact and undefiled. The memory of his love, your Holy Spirit. And all you need do is but wish that heaven be given you instead of hell. And wish is the wrong word. Will it, okay? Ask for it. Ask for it of your Holy Spirit. every bolt and barrier that seemed to hold the door securely barred and locked will merely fall away and disappear. You'll wake up and you'll realize you've never left the kingdom. For it is not your Father's will that you should offer or receive less than he gave when he created you in perfect love. And he gave you perfect love, and therefore he gave you everything, not only of himself, but as you are the extension of himself, the extension of his love. You are the love of God, and you are remembering. Let's stop there and we do some questions.